Uh, right. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see this. Right, so where are we? This is me, this is me, this is talks. Right, agenda for today. So today we're going to talk about the Fediverse. Now, there's actually two reasons I thought covering the Fediverse is going to be of interest to our group. Firstly, the Fediverse is interesting from a technical point of view. It's interesting how it works, how it differs from other social ways to do social media. But secondly, towards the end of the talk, I've got a very concrete proposal to share. So if you want to leave early, that's fine, obviously, but make sure you pick up on this proposal beyond the emails that go out afterwards, of course. So we're going to talk about a little bit of a history about social media sites. You know, it's all not recent. It goes back to quite past. I'm going to spend a lot of time on the Fediverse, talking what the Fediverse is as a type of social media, how the architecture, we've got a video to watch, and moderation and so on. And really, because whenever we talk about social media, instant messaging always comes up and search engine always comes up. So I will touch on those, even though strictly they're not part of social media. Then towards the end, I'm going to cover what I personally do, which is obviously my choices, just to share what I'm doing. A quick demo if that's of interest, and I will end with this concrete proposal that I mentioned. So I'm going to go through all the slides first, all that's on the agenda, and then once we finish, I'll stop sharing and then we can raise discussions, raise any points you like related to the slides we're talking about. So start off with brief history of social media. So social media has really been around since computing. So if we go back to the very beginnings, we had things like bulletin board systems, if you've ever used those. And they, sort of late 70s. And I was quite surprised when I was researching this. One of the last main bulletin boards closed down 1995, not that long ago. And if you'd never used them, these were all text-based. You use your modem, you dial up to a text space thing, and it would slowly draw the screen, and you can go in and chat stuff and download things. Usenet, that is an incredibly interesting system. And again, I was surprised to learn that it's still going. It's a users network. It's a very distributed system to communicate and share files and so on. And that's still going strong. And I'm sure if you look at it, you'll see my name mentioned from the early days, but I've obviously not used it for years. Email. We often forget about email as a way to share social media. Started SMTP based in about 1983 and obviously still going strong. America Online. That's another, you get all these stupid discs on the front of magazines back in the day. America Online, proprietary sites you could dial in and access lots of parts of the internet just from a single dial-up account. CompuServe, I bet you've forgotten that one. But if we go through the mid-years now, classmates.com is still going. Some of the early, what we would now see as social media platforms, like Facebook and so on. Classmates.com, 6degrees.com, that's failed. Friends Reunited, that's failed. Friendster, that's failed. LinkedIn, very early social media platform, still going strong. MySpace, another one which has failed. And of course, then we come to a modern era, which, we all know Facebook by far dominates social media today, now part of Meta. YouTube's worth a mention. And we've got Reddit. Reddit's kind of interesting site, very early days, still going very strong. And obviously we've got Twitter, now renamed X, Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, Fediverse that we're going to talk about today from about 2016 onwards. TikTok. Of course, TikTok had some fun and games recently. Blue Sky. Someone mentioned Blue Sky at the beginning here, 2019 onwards. And of course, the most recent big addition is Threads from Meta, Twitter alternative. So there's actually a huge number of social media sites. When you tend to talk about social media, you immediately think about Facebook and Twitter or X. But there has been over the years an awful lot of them, many of them still going strong. And of course, I've not even started to mention the smaller ones, these online forums, which discuss, specific tasks between like-minded people. Now, I've highlighted some of these in sort of like, grotty green color. There's a reason I've done that, and that these ones I've highlighted are actually decentralized or federated. And I'll go through exactly what this means next. So some terms. So a centralized social media or any centralized site, it's on centralized location under centralized control. And those two things are quite important. Distributed, on the other hand, is multiple locations under centralized control. So, for example, the U3A Communities website, there's only one of them. It's centralized and it's under centralized control. And it's somewhere in the Midlands, I think, where it's physically located. Facebook, however, is distributed. There's not one single Facebook server. There's multiple Facebook servers. When you log into Facebook, you'll probably get a different server each time you connect in, but they're all under centralized control. So each Facebook instance looks exactly the same as any other. Now, federated, this is the big difference. So federated is different, fundamentally different. A federated system is multiple locations, but under local control. Now, this is a really important concept to grasp. So, and we'll dig into this a little bit more detail, but it requires agreements between these multiple locations and a cooperation to create a union. So I'll give an example in a minute what a federated system looks like rather than a centralized one. And some more terms, standards or open-based systems, which is usually includes a public design endorsed by independent standards organizations. So if you've got two things which are manufactured or operated from two different organizations, and those need to communicate, you need a standards-based approach to design how these two talk to each other. So standards are really quite important, particularly in a federation. They're used by multiple organizations to work together. And of course, the opposite of standard-based is proprietary, and they tend to be specific to one organization's, often private and hidden. So there's some terms. And I want to really dig into this idea of centralized versus federated. So we've got a server called facebook.com, and that exists. There's probably multiple of them, but for the purpose of this diagram, we've got one. And if I want to connect to facebook.com, I'll either start up my browser or install an app and log into Facebook. So there's my little there's my phone here connected to Facebook. Now, Facebook is a centralized server. Now, if on the same time on my phone, I want to talk to x.com, I have to install a second app. And this is centralized. So there's absolutely no communication here between Facebook and X. And this is quite critical. I can't, for example, go on Facebook and post a message to a friend who's using X. I can't go on X and post a message to someone on Facebook. They are two completely separate, isolated systems. Now, if you think about another very common social media, email, that is very different. So if someone's got an account, an email account on Gmail, they're going to start off with an app or web browser on their phone or the desktop, and they're going to log into gmail.com and send and receive emails. However, of course, they don't only want to send and receive emails for their friends who've also got Gmail accounts. They want to send emails from other servers. So I've got an account on this site called privateemail.com, and this is me. And so these two people can communicate even though they're not connected to the same server. So this is the whole idea of federated. And for this to work, you need standard protocols. And in the case of email, on your desktop, you're going to use a standard protocol such as IMAP or POP to talk to the server, which means you can use any old email app. It's going to work with your server. And the two servers to form a federation talk to each other via SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So this is very difficult. If, for example, you're going to have to send an email to your friend on this private email, if you were to have an account on there to send them an email, you think the world has gone mad. But that's exactly the same where we are with these centralized social media sites. You connect to one, it's an isolated environment. You have to have a different login and different account to another one. So this is a big difference between centralized and federated. And we're going to talk more as we go through the talk. So we're now currently in the situation that most people use Facebook and X and the big centralized social media companies. And whilst this works, and I'll keep saying this works for large numbers of people, and most people are really happy using them, they do have problems. And now I have to be quite careful here because what I didn't want to do in this talk is to convey a personal opinion here. So I'm taking examples here from the press, just to try and show that I'm not that biased. So some of the issues we face using these centralized big social media sites are the whole reason companies like Facebook exist is to sell adverts. This is what it is. Facebook's not a social media company. It's an ad selling platform that happens to have a bit of social media on the side. So to do these targeting ads, they need to really understand their audience, and they use so many different techniques to find out more information about you so they can send more targeted ads more frequently. So of course, Facebook will know everything that you've written on Facebook. But Facebook also tracks you on other non-Facebook sites using third-party trackers. It uses fingerprinting techniques. So Facebook will know your salary, your sexuality, it'll know who your partners are, who your children are, who your friends are, and so on and so forth. Things that you never disclose on Facebook. Facebook's profile will know about this and will use that to sell ads. So you'll see them on the Facebook site and other sites. So that's one. But so some of this is very much a breach of privacy. Another aspect to these big sites, and you see this in the news a lot, because these sites have these algorithms to send you ads. These algorithms, as well as getting you to see similar sort of ads, they also tend to amplify extreme views. So if someone's got a minority opinion, that minority opinion can spread like wildfire on these sites simply because of the algorithms on these sites. We've also seen political interference on these platforms, and Cambridge Analytica is a good example, a British company that worked with Facebook to sell targeted ads for political gains. And it was used in the first Trump elections, and it was also used in Brexit. And it's well publicized. It's been in the court cases, and you can read documents. You can go on to Wikipedia and see all the gory details if you like. Plenty of documentaries about this. Now, of course, there's always a chance of data leaks. If these sites are collecting data about you more than you've typed in, data that it's inferred or figured out from other sites, then suddenly that data about you becomes very precious. And there's lots of cases of these big sites being hacked and this data being sold for hacking purposes and for kind of resale for credit card numbers and such like. Recently, I suppose very recently, we've got into the mindset of big countries really the Trump has been putting pressures on the big US-based social media companies to behave in certain ways. And of course, we've also got billionaire owners of Twitter that has sort of issues along with it. Big issue with the centralized companies, they're very closed, secretive, so you're never quite sure what they're doing. Privacy, that's all the way through it. So what I've got now is some press articles just to kind of illustrate these concerns. Now, I'm not saying that you are concerned about these or that you'll be hit by these issues, but these are some of the things that many people are concerned about. So FTC here imposed $5 billion penalty against Facebook for privacy problems. Now, on this side of the pond, we've got the European Union, and they've also fined companies for privacy violations under various laws. But you can actually go on the European Union and see a list of all these fines, and you'll see Meta is always in the top 10 of biggest fines that the European Union has given for privacy violations. For things like GDPR violations. Now, a good source of information to try and figure out what these companies are actually doing because they are secretive is to look at court documents. These are declared under, legal correctness, if you like, and you can look at so many court cases with Twitter and Facebook and so on that these court cases are really quite invaluable to try and figure out what's really going on. A data leak, 533 million Facebook users' phone numbers and personal data. So it's a personal data that's key here, not something that you've typed in, but something that Facebook has managed to infer from other sites. And in fact, such a big issue, there's multiple Wikipedia articles on the problems with social media. So you can go through and dig things in. And the thing is about social media, it's a peer review site. So don't get the impression what I'm saying here is like my opinion or conspiracy theories. This is, quite a lot of evidence gone behind that, including documents released in courts. Data security, talking about using data, both public and private data from Facebook to hack your sites, your banking and so on by guessing passwords and other techniques. I mentioned Cambridge Analytica before, and this was, to be honest, a big wake-up call for me personally when I understood what Cambridge Analytica, a British company, was doing with this data. I was quite enraged, to be honest. Good article on Wikipedia about Cambridge Analytica. And of course, it's been in many documentaries in the UK. I love this one. So this was one particular court case that Facebook was in, and the engineers, lowly engineers in court, under oath and so on, put a hand up and say, actually, we've got no idea where your data's stored. Oh God. And you think we're going to trust these people? Now, here's a good one. The Social Dilemma is a documentary, and I saw it on Netflix, and it's definitely worth a watch because it's not just any documentary, it actually contains interviews with engineers and directors who worked at Facebook and Twitter and so on at the time they were building up. So they've been interviewed and they describe how these social media platforms work. It's actually quite an interesting documentary. I'm calling out here to particularly, there's this nice organization called the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF. They've been around really since the beginning of the internet, and they've got some actually quite good information about how data tracking works, how these algorithms work, and how you can configure your browsers and your Facebook profile to kind of reduce the effect of this. Now, one claim I've seen quite a lot when this gets talked about, particularly in the media, is that this idea of metadata is okay. So, for example, let's think WhatsApp. So, WhatsApp is an instant messaging platform. They tell you it's end-to-end encrypted, so no one can spy on actually what you're chatting with each other's about. But of course, the servers know who you're talking to, how long you've connected to, who your friends are, without actually knowing the details of the text themselves. So this metadata, sort of things that appears on your telephone bill, might seem innocuous, but actually, when you start to think about it, it can be really good source of data. And I'll just go through the last one here. So if someone gets hold of your telephone bill, for example, and they showed a number, a source number, a destination number, and a duration, and that's about it, this is what might happen. Someone will know that you called a gynecologist, spoke for half an hour, the length of the call, and then called the local abortion clinic that number later that day. So the person who's read your bill, your telephone bill, has just got telephone numbers and durations, but then because they can look up what these numbers are, they can make a damn good guess of what's been going on here. Now, in many countries, that's not particularly important. Some countries, America springs to mind, that information is critical, and you'll get protesters outside your door. Even though what you've done is perfectly legal, you will get protesters outside your door. So, this idea that metadata is not important is, largely not true. Now, I struggle with this. I've talked about this a few times, and I do struggle about it. So, because these algorithms, particularly on Facebook, they're there to get you to watch more ads, stay on the site longer so you can watch more ads, stay on the site longer. So what Facebook does, it gives you more and more feeds, data feeds of things that it thinks that Facebook thinks you like. So for example, if Facebook are noticing you like lots of pictures of cats, in order to keep you on the site, every so often it will feed you another picture of a cat, so you stay on Facebook a bit longer to see some more ads. And then you start to slow down, and then Facebook will give you another picture of a cat, and so on. You stay online. The problem with this is that for minority views get amplified. So this girl, 14-year-old, she did research suicide on Facebook. And because she did that, the algorithms on Facebook kept giving her more and more information about suicides until, well, it ended. So these algorithms, they're very successful in keeping you on the site and sending you ads, but they have this negative side of spreading minority views much more widely than perhaps they deserve. More recently, we've all seen this, Facebook and Instagram getting rid of fact checkers. Why? I like this one. You'll like this one as well. So, Elon Musk, famous for PayPal, famous for Tesla, famous for the Boring Company, SpaceX, and of course now the owner of X. Now, back in the day when he was forming Tesla, he got quite a lot of support, particularly in California. Quite left wing, people saving the planet, electric cars, excellent. Rich people, of course, electric cars were expensive in those days. And California was really the place where modern day electric cars took off. Now, of course, the people who've bought Teslas feel betrayed because Elon's gone very right wing. So you actually see this sticker now on cars, particularly in California. I bought this Tesla before we knew Elon was crazy. I quite like that. Now, Facebook have dropped manual fact checking, which means they're doing automated. And here's one that happened a couple of weeks ago. I think it was about a week that any posts relating to Linux were blocked. Not great. And if you think that companies like Google are immune to these problems, now Google is quite an interesting company. They used to have in their manifesto, if you like, do no evil. And they did remove that, put it back in again. They also had a policy that their AI would never be used for weapons, and they've recently removed that. And until very recently, Google didn't participate in this third party cookie tracking and fingerprinting that Facebook has done. But just, a few days ago, Google announced that actually they're going to start tracking people more and more. So even, depends on your points of view, but maybe Google, you think Google's one of the better guys. Well, less so these days. So, quick summary so far. And I know that's been a bit, doom and gloom, but bear with me because we'll get better. So we know social media sites come and go, currently dominated by Facebook and X, although with many others, of course. I'm going to say this again. These social media sites are mostly really great for users to share and discuss with friends. But as we've just seen, because these big companies need to make money, mostly via ads, in other words, you are a product, they do this data collection across many sites to build a profile, to send you more ads, and these algorithms distort what you think this truth is. Conspiracy theories are rife, prone to data leaks and security breaches because they hold so much information about you. They're a single centralized site, so there's no sharing of data between sites. You end up with lots of apps. And if you're an engineer, you'll be thinking, is there a better way? And are we going to get to the point of this talk? And the answer is yes, there is a better way. Enter the Fediverse. The Fediverse. So let's say there is a site called mastodon.social. This is a server somewhere, and it is running some software called Mastodon. And Mastodon is open source server. In other words, you can look at the code, you can download it, you can use it, you can change it, and so on. So Mastodon.social is running Mastodon software, and I've got an account on it. And I can use my web browser to do my social media work with Mastodon.social. I can, send posts, I can watch these, I can see my news feed, I can like messages, I can do direct messages, and so on and so forth, all the normal social media stuff. But let's say I've got a friend on a different social media site, techhub.social. Now, this might be running different software. It might have different policies about, rules of engagement, what you can and can't do, and so on. So if I've got a friend here on this server, how can I interact with them? Well, with the Fediverse, yes, you can, because the Fediverse is all connected by the same protocol called ActivityPub. Now, if you remember an earlier slide, we talked about, centralized Facebook versus federated email. This is very much the federated model. We can have multiple servers. Each server is managing their own affairs. They're, updating their software, they're moderating posts and so on, but they're part of a bigger federation via this ActivityPub protocol. So this means that I can sit on my site, I can send messages to my friend on a different server, he can see my messages, I can do likes, I can do direct messages and do news feed, include it into my feed and so on, as if it was a single big centralized site, but it's not. There are multiple smaller sites. Now, it turns out this ActivityPub protocol, which is an open standard, monitored by W3C, which also manages most of the internet protocols we use today. There's another site here, Friendica, which is much more like Facebook with groups and so on. Different software's running, a different server, but it supports ActivityPub. So on my mastodon.social site, I can interact with people on this server. Great. But it goes more. We've got loops. So you can download the Loop software, which is a short video type system, much like TikTok. You can get an account on there, use that, be part of ActivityPub, so you can interact with anyone else on the Fediverse. We've got PeerTube, which is like a YouTube equivalent to store videos. And again, you can follow YouTube videos from your own Fediverse account. We got PixelFed for photographs. Actually quite an interesting site, some spectacular photographs on there. And you can, if you like your favorite photographer, you can follow them with any other account on the Fediverse. Lemmy, which is a Booksmarks type thing, again speaks ActivityPub. So we can interact with anyone who uses Lemmy exactly the same way. We've got groups, another form of ActivityPub. Here's an interesting one. So if you have got a website that uses WordPress, you can install the ActivityPub plugin, and suddenly your website is part of the Fediverse. So if you want to follow some particular posts on a website, you can do that with your Mastodon account or other Fediverse account. You can just follow the feed from this website. Flipboard. Now, Flipboard is quite an old, predates the Fediverse, but Flipboard is like a news type site. And people like, organizations like the BBC share their news on that site. Flipboard have now enabled ActivityPub. So again, they are part of this bigger Fediverse. And amazingly, I still can't believe this, Meta has got a X equivalent called Threads, and they've enabled ActivityPub on their server. So if you've got anyone on Threads, you can follow them on the Fediverse without having an account on Threads. You can still interact with them. So ActivityPub is really doing, I would argue, technically at least, this is the correct way to do social media. It's a federation, it's not a single server. All these little servers here, they can be tiny servers, they can be, servers for, a few tens of people, tens of thousands of people. They will have volunteers to upgrade the software, to do the moderation, manage their own problem themselves, and yet still be part of this bigger, this greater social media. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, what about Blue Sky? Well, after the Fediverse created, Blue Sky came along, and it was actually created by one of the founders of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, and somewhat infuriating. They wanted to do this federation exactly the same way as ActivityPub, but they chose a different protocol. Why would they do that? So they got the AT protocol. And the Blue Sky idea is lots of people would use the AT protocol to build up a federation exactly the same way as ActivityPub. But today, at least, it really is only Blue Sky using this protocol. So we've got lots of different software stacks all using ActivityPub. And on the other side, we've got Blue Sky. It's only Blue Sky using a different protocol. It's a shame, really, they didn't use ActivityPub, but, we are where we are. But fret not. There is a bridge between the two. So there's Bridgie, and you can set up Bridgie pretty easily, which bridges between these two protocols. Now, that means that if you're on the Fediverse using ActivityPub protocols, you can follow people on Blue Sky. And likewise, if you're on Blue Sky, you can follow people on the Fediverse. So this Bridgie is really, it's a bi-directional link. You can send messages, you can follow feeds and so on. It's actually quite a nice little solution. Now, although the AT protocol isn't a public standard, it is at least published so that these sorts of software can be written and they can exist. Now, let's go a little bit further. So I'm personally a big fan of RSS. RSS stands for Real Simple Syndication. Many websites support it. They may not advertise it, but many websites support it. And what you can do with RSS is you can have on your desktop a little like newsreader, and that will use the RSS protocol between your desktop and loads of different websites and give you a sort of like unified view of all the news that you're interested in. So you can use RSS to read BBC News, Sky News, the latest news about electric cars or whatever it might be, and get everything consolidated in a desktop. It's actually quite a nice way to do things. Many websites support RSS. So there is a little bridge called RSS Parrot, which you can use to take these articles on these websites. I give BBC News as an example, and that can feed into your feed on your ActivityPub on your social media site. So that's nice. And you can go a little bit further if you get carried away. But websites that don't use RSS, and I'll give an example of Facebook here, you can actually use this tool called Fetch RSS, which converts it into RSS, and then use RSS Parrot, which gets you into your feed. So you see what's starting to happen. ActivityPub is starting to become the integration point, if you like, of different types of social media. Let's bring everything in, one account on the Fediverse, and you can access and interact with people on many different software platforms, including Blue Sky, including websites, including PeerTube for videos and PixelFed for photographs, and so on and so forth. So this is the way the Fediverse works. Rather than having a single big social media platform, lots of little ones working together using standard off-the-shelf protocols. And of course, this does mean that anyone can start a social media platform and plug it into the Fediverse and start using it. Interesting. So I've got a little video now.
These days, social media can feel painful. We use separate platforms for sharing videos, photos, and posts. They're owned by different companies and don't really work together. Posts from one platform can't appear on another. So we end up with 3 logins, 3 audiences, and 3 streams to follow. If we leave a platform, everything disappears. If we move to a new platform, we have to start over. Social media is now centralized. The big players compete and lock us in so they can sell ads and data. An idea called the Fediverse, which stands for Federated Universe, is changing this scenario. To start, let's talk about the idea of federation. The United States, for example, is a federation. Each state has an independent government, leader, flag, cultures, and traditions, but they are also connected by a shared set of rules and governance. For example, all U.S. citizens can use the same currency and easily travel across state lines. In this federation, each state is independent but connected to the whole. This combination of independence and connection is at the heart of the Fediverse, too. Here's what I mean. Instead of being centralized, the Fediverse is made of platforms and apps that operate more independently. Let's consider Fediverse platforms for sharing videos, photos, and bookmarks. They use open source software and are managed by teams of passionate people. It's up to each platform to find a niche, set policies, and manage users. They are independent but connected. In the background, a protocol works like a translator between platforms of the Fediverse. This protocol is free to use and is called ActivityPub. When a platform adopts it, that platform becomes part of the Fediverse and can connect with other platforms. Now, let's look at how people use the Fediverse. With an account on a Fediverse platform, you can follow others, share content, earn followers, and more. When you follow an account, their posts appear in a stream along with everyone you follow. But that's not all. Because the Fediverse is connected, you can follow accounts from other platforms and see their content in the same stream. You can also follow hashtags, blogs, and discussions from anywhere in the Fediverse. When you publish content, it's available to your followers, anyone on your platform, and people who follow you from other platforms. Further, your identity and followers are portable. If you move to a different platform, they go with you. When each participant owns their identity and followers, the Fediverse becomes an ecosystem that's flexible and always evolving. If an existing platform joins the Fediverse, it works the same way. Posts can flow to and from other platforms in the Fediverse. This means Fediverse users can follow accounts on large platforms without joining them, and vice versa. The Fediverse is just getting started and could represent the future of social media. For now, consider it a new way to participate in communities on the web.
Right. That video actually started before I was ready. I was going to do a little introduction, but the video really is a different way to restate what I was trying to express with the way the Fediverse works. So I'm sure you're thinking, well, what about, okay, so the Fediverse is going to solve, hopefully, the big company problem, the billionaire type problem, no algorithms, no ads. It solves a lot of problems just by, getting away from big business. But there's still a problem about moderation. People will still be able to post things that may be, unpalatable or illegal. So there is still need for moderation. And the Fediverse does support moderation, of course, and the administrations on these sites will need to, respond to reported moderation failures. But the thing is that because each server has got only a small numbers of users as a large number of server, it's a smaller problem to solve. The administrators on Mastodon.social is going to moderate, maybe 10,000 users, something like that. And that's a big server. So it's a smaller problem to solve. Now, users can be in different statuses on the Fediverse. They can be classed as sensitive users. So this is a case where that particular user is posting something perfectly legal, but maybe upsetting to some people. So, it might be, I don't know, think of an example here, a naturist group. They might be posting lots of, new or art, lots of naked people, but still perfectly legal. Those are classed as sensitive. So you get the picture is sent out, but it's by default, it's obscured. So you actually have to click to actually see the picture. Now, if a user is going through moderation, their account can be frozen. Now, what a frozen account means that the account is still visible by everyone, but no new posts can take part. And there's also a limit, a status of a user which is limited, so the content of that user is now hidden except for their direct followers. And of course, a user can be suspended, which all their content is now no longer available. And what tends to happen is that the user in particular is notified by email, and there's an appeal process and discussion to, re-enable the account. So the Fediverse, so because we've got many different servers here talking to each other using ActivityPub, you could imagine that there's a new Fediverse starts up doing some illegal discussions. It starts selling guns or something that may not be legal in your jurisdictions. So what each individual Fediverse server can do is list which list of servers it can connect to, or more specifically, it can block out particular bad actors. So it can reject any media files from particular bad servers. It can limit the content, or it can actually just stop talking to servers completely. And of course, we've got anti-spam in place. So, if you get too many emails or, blocked by IP address, all the usual sort of spam stuff. Now, I've got this picture, which is a picture from a Kickstarter. So this PixelFed is a not-for-profit or, an open source project. And they are trying to get funding, and this is their plans to actually take this moderation problem and move it up to the next level. But one of the nice things that I saw here is that once one site starts doing moderation of its users, it can share its rules with other sites. So it's really, again, it's divide and conquer. Let's share the problem. Let's work together rather than doing our own thing. So the moderation is going along quite well. I'm not aware of any kind of bad failures here. Now, I'd like to call out particularly to this site, fedi.tips. It's actually a really nice site. If you don't understand much about the Fediverse and want to get going, go there. And it's got new starter guides, it's got videos, it's got lots of frequently asked questions. You can, ask a question, how do I talk to my friend on Blue Sky, or, how do I follow videos, or whatever your questions might be. The chances are that fedi.tips has already got you covered. So yeah, special call out to those guys. Now, of course, the thing about social media is there's very little point of joining a social media site where no one else is on it. No point talking to yourself, in other words. So we do have to think about numbers, and this is where the argument of the Fediverse is not so strong, I'll admit. But we have to look at numbers. Now, I put numbers-ish here because it's really difficult to find out numbers about social media sites to compare them. There's different ways to count it. Sometimes it's secret, sometimes it's public, sometimes the data is old. But I've gathered this data and it's probably in the ballpark, I would say. So the Fediverse. Fediverse is all the sites that talk to each other via the activity pub protocol. So when I looked at this, there was 11.5 million users, and it may be more towards 15 million now. Of those users, maybe 1.5 million are active. In other words, they're publishing details each day. And surprisingly large numbers of servers, well, nearly 26,000 Fediverse servers all connected together via the activity pub protocol. A large number of servers was telling you that each server is actually quite small in terms of users. And Blue Sky, another Blue Sky. So it's got last time about 27 million users. Yeah, sort of like double the Fediverse, I would say, something like that. And the active users, the people who've got an account or are actively using it, about 3.5 million. So between 2 and 3 times the Fediverse numbers of users. Threads, Meta's Twitter equivalent. Active users, about 33 million, which is about 10 times that of Blue Sky. But now here's the thing, this is a way we need to think. Because all of the above are available through ActivityPub, you can create an account on the Fediverse and talk to anyone in the Fediverse, anyone in Blue Sky, anyone on Threads. So we should be seeing ActivityPub and the Fediverse as a common protocol to do social media. Going on, we got X. Active users, 200 million. About 6 times the number of users as Threads. TikTok, active users, about 1 billion, which is about 5 times as many as X. So, TikTok, it's taken down in the US recently, but TikTok is a massive site for sharing all these short videos used by a certain generation. Not to be underestimated. Facebook, about 2 billion active users, about double TikTok. And finally, email. Email active users, over 4 billion active users on Facebook. Now, the people who are sending emails on a daily basis, and it's about twice as big as Facebook. So email is still the killer app in the social media world, whatever anyone else thinks. Facebook, TikTok, X, massive. But obviously they have downsides, as we've talked about. And the Fediverse, the connectivity is there on the slightly smaller numbers. So I said earlier we're going to talk mostly about social media. But it always comes up. You start about talking about social media, and someone will mention WhatsApp. Now, instant messaging isn't really social media and what we normally think, but let's talk about it anyway. And we'll also mention search engines because that always comes up. So, like social media, the social sites, instant messaging has also got a history. So in the beginning, we had Talk. I actually used this recently, actually. Talk is a little command line tool you use on Unix-like systems. SMS, we often forget about SMS, now RCS, rich text version of SMS. Internet relay chat, one of the earliest forms of, sending messages between two or more people, still going today. MSN chat, this was huge in its time, and no one would think it would end it, but it did end. It had a number of technical problems, but it was very big. And of course, Skype. For many, many years, Skype was the killer instant messaging app. I like this one. BlackBerry messaging. This comes from the little BlackBerry. Certainly my kids loved it. Although it was initially aimed at the business community, the BlackBerry phones came with a full-size keyboard, and the kids just loved tapping with their two thumbs to share messages. And you weren't, in the school playground, you have to have a BlackBerry because otherwise you're stupid or something. But that failed like many others. Google Talk also had a bash at this. Didn't last forever. Was never that popular. But in the modern era, although some of these instant messaging protocols are going, WhatsApp has come along and really dominated the instant messaging market. However, Signal is a very valiant contender. Still a centralized instant messaging app, but is centralized in the same way as WhatsApp is. But it is a not-for-profit. So, personally, I've switched to Signal. Of course, Apple have got their own way of doing it on iMessage. Telegram is a big one, particularly for talking about technical groups and maybe on the fringes of the law. Telegram is pretty popular. Now, Matrix is worth a call out. Matrix is, I think, one of the very few federated instant messages services. So really, if we follow this talk, just conclusion, we also be switching to Matrix, but it's tiny numbers, so it's probably not worth doing, but still, you can do. So, I've not gone into numbers for instant messaging, but we know WhatsApp is big. Where Skype was very big, now it's WhatsApp, which is part of Meta. And even though WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, you can bet that Meta is going to be using it to add to your Facebook profile to, find out more information about who your friends are, how long you're talking to people, to add it to your targeted ads. Right, search engines I'll also have a little call out to. So in the beginnings, we had Gopher, which is still going. W3 Catalog, that didn't last long. AliWeb, mid-years, Yahoo. Yahoo's still going, amazingly. Lycos was a good one. Alta Vista, I always like using Alta Vista, but that folded. And of course, Ask Jeeves as well, for a search engine. That didn't last that long. And of course, in the modern era, Google search is now dominating the search engine space. We don't do a web search, we do a Google search. It's coming into the day-to-day vocabulary. However, there are alternatives to Google search. Bing is there, is a default in some cases. DuckDuckGo is often touted as a much more private way to do searching than Googling. But they still do advertising. They're into crypto and so on. An alternative to all of these is an open source search engine called SeerX, Seer NG, Next Generation. And this you can actually install on your own web server if you like, and then be completely anonymous when you're doing your searching. So I've gone through this pretty quickly and I'm wrapping up. We've got a demo to do, a proposal to do, and then we can open it up to discussions. But before we do, these are my personal choices that I've made. And I'm not saying that you should do this. I'm not saying that you should look at all the doom and gloom stuff and take any particular action, but factor it into your software choices. Probably the biggest thing I'm trying to say today is yes, we got Facebook, yes, we got Google searches, but there are alternatives. If you're not happy with these platforms, try and find an alternative that suits your state of mind better. So anyway, this is what I do. I left Facebook when Cambridge Analytica scandal hit the headlines. And I actually did quite a bit of research at the time, wrote a paper about how Facebook worked. And I also left WhatsApp when Meta changed the terms and conditions. Most people get new terms and conditions, just hit go. I read them and thought, right, nope, I'm no longer doing anything with WhatsApp. I now have a Fediverse account and only one account on Mastodon.social. There it is. And I use the bridge to bridge to and from Blue Sky. So actually, I don't have an actual account on Blue Sky, although I can interact with anyone else on Blue Sky. And that's my Blue Sky account, although I don't have one. And I use the bridge to supported websites. I use RSS Parrot to get news via RSS, things like Slashdot, festival news, and so on. I've got a personal account, plord.co.uk, that runs WordPress, and I've installed the ActivityPub plugin. So any post I put on my private website, you can follow on the Fediverse. And likewise, U3A Communities has also joined the Fediverse in the same way. It's a WordPress site. It's got the ActivityPub plugin. And if you follow U3A Communities on the Fediverse, then you'll get notified when there's new events. And U3A Communities is also published into Blue Sky. Now, both of these from U3A Communities is, let's say, under testing. So we're exploring the ideas a little bit, but it is there. And personally, I use Signal now for instant messaging. I've persuaded my family to move away from WhatsApp to Signal, so we use Signal. I'm considering moving to K-Meet for video conferencing, which is Jitsi under the covers. And I use CRX Next Generation for searching. And so can you. I've got a search engine at search.plord.co.uk if you wanted to do your web searches using my... There we go. So now here's the big thing. So hope you're all listening now, because this is the big message. And actually, I've got some stuff in the chat window here. Yeah, we'll cover those questions at the end. So this is a big thing. So I really think this is paying attention. So what do you think of this idea? All right. What's to stop us creating our own Fediverse site? Let's call it u3a.social. We can allow onto U3A social any person belonging to any U3A in the world. So here I've got some examples of U3A communities, Third Age Trust, U3A Cambridge, U3A Australia, whoever. And of course, we can connect our site to ActivityPub. So if you create an account on u3a.social, then you can interact with anyone else on the Fediverse or bridge to Blue Sky, whatever. So this is my concrete proposal for the day. And in fact, I've gone a little bit further than this. I've actually registered the domain u3a.social. So that now belongs to me. And if you were to fire up a web browser and type in u3a.social, you'll actually get a temporary redirect to a information site. So this is my proposal. is there interest in creating a Fediverse server just for the U3A folks? And I've got some details in the site. Just type in u3a.social, you get to this. And of particular importance here, if you go down to the bottom, there is a survey. And here's this what a survey looks like. Just I think there's 5 questions on it or something. So big requests from me is to look at the u3a.social site, read through it, click through to the server, fill in what you think. If you think we should go ahead,
There we are. That's what he's.
If you think we should go ahead and create u3a.social, then say so in the survey. Say, yeah, I think it's a great idea. If you think it's a terrible idea, then also please say so. u3a.social, is it a good idea or not? I've created the domain. It gets directed to an information page. That's it, really. And if you think it's a great idea or a bad idea, I would ask you to talk about it. Mention u3a.social when you talk to other people in other u3a groups. Hey, wouldn't it be a great idea if we created a Fediverse instance and invited u3as around the world? So let's not constrain it to any particular geographic area. And let's give it, I've got this domain u3a.social for 12 months. So it'll be very interesting to see if we get significant interest in this idea. Personally, I'm willing and able to donate some of my time to it, and I hope other people would can dedicate some of their time to it as well. So, so this is a bit summary. We've got a little demo, and then we can open it up to discussion. So summary, social media sites and messaging and search engines come and go. Currently, we know social media is dominated by Facebook, TikTok, and X. Works well for many, and I can keep saying it, but it has some issues, particularly recently in the current sort of political climate. And it's looking like the Fediverse will make a sizable dent into the market share of these big platforms. Blue Sky is getting a lot of traction in the media. It's getting, I was looking at Sky News this morning, and Sky News has got a little strap line along the bottom, saying, contact us or Facebook, Twitter, and so on. And they got a Blue Sky logo. So Blue Sky is getting a lot of publicity. Fediverse, much less so. WhatsApp is currently dominating messaging, but it's part of Meta. You can make your own choice on that. Signal, Telegram for more independence and privacy. Google is dominating search. DuckDuckGo, Sear X next generation for privacy, if that's your thing. And a big question, the second thing for upcoming today, should we create a u3a.social site? And I think this is the last slide. You'll be glad to know. I'm seeing this kind of slide a lot on the Fediverse, and it's saying, oh, you're on WhatsApp, move to Signal. You're on Reddit, move to Lemmy. If you're on Instagram, move to PixelThread. If you're on YouTube, move to PeerTube, and so on. So there's definitely, it's almost like a movement, almost like a political movement to get out of these big platforms and something more independent, that you've got a bigger say on how they're managed. Now, before we've got a little short demo, and I'm not going to spend very long on this, short demo of what the Fediverse looks like from a user's point of view. And the last slide here is links, so I can finish the slide. So what does the Fediverse look like? This is, I'm sure, is a big question you're asking. Well, here we go. This is the Fediverse. So this is mastodon.social, and this is the web version of the site. So you can just use a web browser, same as Facebook and Twitter and such like. And this is what it looks like, very, very familiar what it looks like. So you've got your profile here. Oh, you don't have to use a web browser. You can use the Mastodon app on your phone or on your desktop, and you can use loads of third-party apps as well. because these are standard protocols people are creating lots of different apps, structured with different colors and different layouts and so on to suit different people. So I'm trying lots of different apps out and finding the ones that I like and which ones I don't. Anyway, so this is my homepage. A little bit about me. I've got a web page, but one thing I do want to point out is to list who I'm following. So you can see sorts of people I'm following. I've got this weird guy, I know he's on the call, who's on Friendica. BBC has got a Fediverse account here, so I'm following them. You go down here, lots of these will be Mastodon type servers. I go a bit further down. Oh, there we are. This is a website I'm following, which is a crowdfunding website. I'm sure you're not interested in these sorts of things, but Flipboard. BBC News publishes on Flipboard, so I can very easily follow BBC News by simply following BBC News at flipboard.com. Threads. I can follow Martin Lewis from Money Supermarket because he's got a Threads account, and Threads, Meta's Threads talks Activity Pub, so I can follow them directly. Following a guy on PeerTube there. See what anything else I've got down here. Youth Communities, of course. That's a good one to follow. Electronic Frontier Foundation. What else? Some festival feeds. George Takei, very good person to follow from Star Trek, of course. The Fedi tips. And these are some RSS sites. So, I've got an electric car, a Kona, and there's a forum which discusses everything about this particular car. It's available on RSS. So I've added it to my feed. So if anyone starts talking about problems with my particular car, I'm going to see some issues discussed here. So you can see I'm actually bringing lots of different feeds from lots of different places all together, lots of RSS sites, Bridgie, so I'm bridging to Blue Sky, and so on and so forth. And the sort of format of Mastodon is very much, I'm sure you're familiar with. You can look at your posting feed, and who knows what you might see here, but so some crowdfunding news. Energy stats is in my feed, so that's coming up, and so on and so forth. Mastodon has got bookmarks, so if you see a post that you like, you can bookmark it and then come back to it later. You can create lists, so I've got lists of festival sites, for example, so I can do this. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You can see the sort of site it is. Very user-friendly, easy to use. The only issue I've ever seen with using the Fediverse is that when you install the app, you start it up, and the very first question it asks is, what server do you want to connect to? And if you didn't know what the Fediverse was to start with, that's not a very user-friendly introduction. So create yourself an account on one of the, on Mastodon.social or one of the big sites, and the Fedi Tips has got some advice about which server to choose. Create an account on there, and then when you fire up your app, you type in the name of your server, your username and password, then you're in. So there's a little bit of a hurdle I found when first using it, a little bit confusing. But once you understand what the Fediverse is and that you need to know what server to connect to, you've got the server name, username, password, then you're in. Once you're in, that's it. You don't need to do anything else. Blue Sky, very, very similar. It has things the other way around. It's got the menu on that side instead of this side. And, like you can have a look at my profile if you like. And this is, I don't have a real account here, but it's bridged from Mastodon.social. You can see my posts that I've posted on Mastodon, that's appeared in Blue Sky. So, if you prefer to have an account on Blue Sky, great, go ahead with it. Follow me on Blue Sky. But one thing I would say, if you create a Blue Sky account, then enable bridging to the Fediverse so that you've got that user capture on the Fediverse. Likewise, if you create an account on the Fediverse, bridge to Blue Sky, you may as well. Then you're covering all your bases there. But anyway, Blue Sky is very similar to Mastodon in terms of usability, and you can download the app and use it. So personally, I think these are very easy to use apps. Once you've created an account, off you go. Right, phew. So I think I have just about finished for my talks. Good timing. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to open up first to verbal questions. If you want to put your hands up, and then obviously we'll just come to you in order. And then obviously you have to unmute yourself. So Alan, fire away.
First off, I mean, absolutely fabulous presentation. Thank you very much. It was both informative and well, you sold me to it. No problem. I'm absolutely sold. I've already moved from, I mean, when Twitter was sold to Musk, I moved to Blue Sky. And when the main social platforms in the USA became, so it basically introduced no fact checking. I got rid of my Facebook account, but the problem is that I'm sure there are lots of other people in my position. Blue Sky is fine. Removing Facebook gives me lots of disadvantages because, for example, the U3A put lots of stuff on Facebook. So I'm absolutely for the Fediverse. I'm absolutely for your suggestion of moving some of the U3A onto it. One question, clearly if the U3A start moving to Fediverse, it's not an either or, is it? I mean, the U3A can use, for example, Facebook and the Fediverse, and then gradually move to the Fediverse. It's not something that's going to happen like we're on Facebook today and we have to move to the Fediverse tomorrow.
Absolutely, I agree with everything you've said there. I'm with you. I think the Fediverse, once you start to explore it, is actually a pretty good idea. And it almost feels like it's the way social media should have been built to start with, but the big companies took it over. I would recommend on Blue Sky that you bridge to the Fediverse, so you get the coverage there. And if you can, go to u3.social, click through to the survey, fill it in, give your thoughts, and then over time we can see if there's significant interest to go ahead with this project. And I'd also ask, if you're talking to other people in U3A, mention it. I went to this talk the other day. This weird guy was talking about U3A.social. Sounds like a good idea. Do you think we should do it? So yeah, do spread the word. The other thing I was going to mention, which haven't yet, is I'm always more than happy to do this talk, or any of my talks really, to other groups. So if you've got a U3A Facebook group and you know nothing about the Fediverse, then I'm more than happy to come in and talk about it. We can have some discussions and so on. So I'm not here to sell ideas really. I'm mostly here to talk about how things work. But it seems to me the Fediverse is quite a good platform. Paul, got your hand up.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Peter. My apologies. I did miss part of it because I had an interruption here. But have I got this right? When you federate all this stuff, is there possibilities of data leakage between the different apps and things? Or different platforms?
So the whole point of the activity pub protocol is to allow different servers to interact with each other. So if you've got an account on one server on the Fediverse, you can interact fully with an account on a different server on the Fediverse because they'll talk to each other via the activity pub protocol. And the way to think of it is very much like email. You may not have an account on gmail.com, but yet you can still send messages to persons on Gmail once you got their address. So data leaks not really the thing, but the activity is there to enable discussions and communications between different Fediverse. But there is this moderation level. So each Fediverse server is responsible for their own management, and so they will decide what other Fediverse sites will enable connections to it. So if there's a new Fediverse server that starts up that talks about, I don't know, the adult industry or something like that, then your Fediverse server, you might decide not to connect to that server because you don't have the same values as that server, so you won't open up that connection.
Yeah, I mean, my concerns are multitude actually. It, as you have alluded to, and I don't do Facebook, I've gone nowhere near it, but I've read articles recently that says, does it even matter if you've never had an account? If you've ever gone to a BBC News page and it happened to have a white pixel on a white background in a picture that gets pulled from a Facebook server somewhere, they then, until you clear out your cookies, got a tracking cookie and they're tracking everywhere you go. And that seems to be well substantiated in the tech press. So we've got this big alert there. But the problem I'm starting to have now is not a problem with the UK authorities, but you've got a certain creature called Trump in power in the States, and he's already made statements about what he could and might want to do with some of the organizations that he now has control of over there. And when you go into a federated thing, to a certain extent, even though I might be interacting in a certain way and it's me that's controlling that, if it's going through a central infrastructure, that is a central point of data mining to some extent, or something that could be hacked or controlled.
No. ActivityPub is a peer-to-peer protocol, not
Right.
centralized. So the whole point about the Fediverse is there is no centralized thing. And in fact, it does support moving to servers. So let's say you create an account on your Fediverse server and Trump takes it over, and you don't like the local policies that you're connected to. You just move your account to a different server and all your followers will come with you. There's protocols that allow you to move to a different server and leave the nasty one alone.
So effectively, it's acting like a controlled cloud deposit to some extent, isn't it? Or bridges between different things. But you control that as a user. I am sorry I did miss part of it because I got an interrupt here.
Yeah, there's a little video. Actually, if you go to u3a.social, that will redirect to a little information site. And the video we watch is actually on that site. So I would suggest just watching that video and you think, oh yeah, it's designed better, I would say, much better.
Thank you.
Philip.
Yeah, I've got a question. Is the Fediverse like, can you control who follows you, basically? I mean, one of the reasons that I like Facebook and use Facebook is I can control who sees my posts to my friends only. I've never liked Twitter because I don't want to publish things so that the entire world can see what I'm saying. Can you control who follows you on the Fediverse?
So here's the thing. So what defines a Fediverse is any site that uses the ActivityPub protocol. And there's multiple open source software stacks that speak ActivityPub. So Mastodon is one, Fendica is another. And these different implementations of ActivityPub have different features. Some of them absolutely do have the feature that you're asking for, that you keep your discussions private. And in fact, I think if u3a.social takes off, one of the requirements we'll want to look to is be able to post and keep your post only local on that server. So only U3A colleagues will ever see your post. It won't escape from that server. So yes, there is those facilities. Different Fediverse servers, some implement it and some don't. So if you're interested in that, then choose a server to connect to that has the policies that you're looking for.
Okay, thanks.
John.
I'm struggling with what the point of u3a.social actually is. I've been here through most of the talk, but at the end I still can't quite get my head round what exactly having u3a.social might be that we don't already have in various other forms. Having said that, put that out like that. One of my long-term issues with the whole of the U3A is the fact that it is virtually impossible to communicate across U3A groups. The nearest we've got is an online version of interest groups online. That doesn't do the job. If you want to create some sort of link with, I don't know, people in Tiverton, U3A has never offered and positively avoids offering things like that. So yes, if there was a way of making that happen, that would be good. Is that U3A social?
I would propose to you that it's exactly that. So if you actually look, if you go to u3a.social and it doesn't redirect to information page, in there will say exactly what you've just expressed. That one of the issues with, there's lots of U3As around the world, but lots of issues with the third age trust in the UK is that you go to a meeting, science talk or something, and you want to chat about it after the event, you can't do it. You might want to reach out to other local groups, really hard to do. You might want to send a broadcast message to everyone in your local area that, hey, I'm doing this talk. Do you want to come along? You can't do that. Everything is very local group orientated.
Yes, it's very silent.
In the third age trust. So one of the proposals for u3a.social is that we would set it up the way that we want it to run. We can choose the right software that speaks ActivityPub, configure it in our ways. And one of my visions is we'd have different levels of sharing. So you might want to send a message to everyone who's just attended a meeting and talk about something that happened in that meeting. You might want to send messages to everyone in a local science group, for example, or everyone in your local area, or everyone in your country, or you might want to have a global discussion about one particular subject, something like home automation. There's never going to be that many people in your local U3A that knows a lot about home automation. So instead, why not reach out to U3A colleagues, the whole world, and talk about the subject, home automation, rather than something which is constrained locally. So I totally agree with you. The Third Age Trust has got this huge piece missing, as far as I can see, for communications. And since we got many people use Facebook to replace that, of course, they have, in Wokingham, there's a Wokingham Facebook group, and I'm sure there's lots of Facebook groups. But it seems to me we should be able to do so much better to talk to each other within U3 organisations.
Just a comment on that, Peter. The Third Age Trust setup is deliberate. The whole point of the Third Age Trust organisation is to keep operations atomized from one another, and they're all, as it would just say, I think I can't remember what the exact phrase is now, operationally independent. And that suffuses the entire organisation, and you ain't going to change that in the next half century.
But yes, and I think
that's not to say there isn't an alternative, which you are proposing, and I'm, notionally at least in favour of that.
So yes, I mean that's what I see as well. But I've also seen that really since the pandemic, when people have been doing more things online, there's much more a request or desire to talk electronically with other people in U3A, either in the same meeting but not physically face to face, and it's so hard with the Third Age Trust to do that. Peter.
I've got a couple of points. The first point is I like to understand the data model you're using. I think you need a data model here, because having looked at all the list of people you have there, that model is pretty enormous. So I'm left with the issue, what is the underlying data model we're talking about? That's one thing. The second thing is the actual server on U3A social would be your own server in your own house connected to the network. Am I correct?
So the last one first.
Yeah,
I think if the idea of U3 social takes off, then we have to be serious about it. We need to find a hosting platform, that's got backups and failovers and all the rest of the stuff.
exactly.
This isn't
Yeah,
a home server type thing.
yeah,
We could, first thought is we could host it, use the same hosting provider as U3 communities. The advantage there is it would probably be free to us. There's so we could do that. But yes, it would be a serious undertaking to host this. We need people in the U3A who've got administration experience to give up their time to set stuff up. We need other people, perhaps less technical people who's going to help with moderations and so on. So yes, we do need volunteers to run this. It's not going to be me running a little server in the corner. If it's going to happen, it has to happen more seriously. We also have to go through almost like a requirements gathering process, which I think what you were trying to get to first. What sort of communications do we want on this u3a.social site? And I mentioned some of them, talk about an event you've just been to, or talk about your local, reach out to your local science groups or whatever it might be. We need to go through a process to figure out what we want. We need to choose the software that's going to be closest to what we want. We need to administrate. We've got to do moderation on it. This isn't a little task. This is why I created the survey. If you're in favor of it, go to u3a.social, click through the survey, fill it in. If you think it's a great idea, fill the survey in. If you think this is a terrible idea and you should carry on still using Facebook, fill the survey in all the same. I really want to find out how many people think this is a good idea and how many people think this is a terrible idea.
I don't want to. What I'm just trying to get my brain around is what the data model is, because I think that's the important thing. Because what you've made very clear today, that these organizations like Facebook and WhatsApp have a data model which they crawl around all the time, and that data model is obviously very carefully thought out and very, very clever, because they can correlate information from quite a wide range of sources. Really, as you'll point out today, they focus that information on a file called Peter Lord or Peter Weston, no matter what it is, and under that heading they will put a lot of information by the sound of it. Now, are we going to have a similar sort of model, or what is it? I don't think we would.
No,
but what I'm saying, you can see the model they're running, and with that model, they then say, "Who wants to advertise this?" Okay, then we go from our list of potential adverts. You see what I'm saying? It's understanding the model we're going to talk about here.
Let me be clear. In the Fediverse, there is no algorithms. There's no Facebook-like profile that sniffs information from lots of different sites. There's no advertising. There's no big companies involved. There's no billionaires involved. This is, going back to the early days of the internet, where groups of individuals got together, created a server, and manned it themselves with volunteers. This is not big company stuff. There is no profile. There is no ads. All there's there is your name, your email address that's used for verifying when you first sign up, and then all the messages that you send, direct messages or posts or whatever. There's no hidden messages, no hidden data here at all.
But someone is putting messages up,
Yep.
and those messages belong to somebody, or pretend. I don't know if they do or not, but the messages go up, and they have to be sort of not archived, but filed in some way under some kind of structure. So that if I want to find out, there has to be an underlying data structure. That's what I'm trying to get to at the moment.
Yeah, so I think you're mixing up two separate things. I mean, there's no Facebook type profile. There's no database that tries to understand, what your wages is, so what your sexuality is. None of that is in the Fediverse. However, there is some core concepts in ActivityPub, and these core concepts are things like you can create a post and other people can follow you and so read the post on your timeline. You can create direct messages. You can follow hashtags. as subject orientated, so you can follow everything about Home Assistant. You can actually dig in there and find out other people on your instance or other instances that are interested in home automation via Home Assistant. So these sorts of things absolutely do exist, but they're very public. What you see is what you get.
Also, as gentleman pointed out on Facebook, you can decide who you want to allow to follow you or what groups you are. So there is also a concept of groups in some form within the Fediverse. Is there a concept of group, which is a group of individuals, or is it just the actual server?
Yes,
all the time here.
So Mastodon itself doesn't have a strong idea of groups, but other Fediverse servers and software like Friendica and Groupie do have a strong concept of groups. So that when we come to implement u3a.social, we'll want to gather our requirements. You just mentioned groups, or the consensus might be that we need groups, and that way we're going to choose some open source software that speaks ActivityPub, can communicate with the Fediverse, but yet supports the features that we need.
So if someone who is managing the group and they had power over their own group, they might decide to exclude someone for no good reason, but that will be a possibility, would it?
This would be all under our control. So we manage the server. What mostly these servers do is they have a small administration team who look after backups and fix problems when things fail and that sort of stuff. And they have a bigger set of volunteers who actually do moderation. So if you get posts that are reported being inappropriate, those moderators will have to take the right sort of actions to give the person a warning or temporarily suspend them or whatever it might be. So
there's have to be an appeal system and all the rest. It's non-trivial, isn't it? This whole thing's non-trivial, isn't it, in my judgment?
Yeah, but there's a lot of people in the U3A who's got a lot of free time.
Okay.
And so
I like it. We give them a job to do.
Yeah. So
Okay.
you're perfectly right. So if you have a look at that u3a.social, I actually mentioned a lot of things you talked about. We need to go through a requirements gathering phase, figure out what we as a group want, what features we need. We need volunteers, we need technical volunteers, we need non-technical volunteers to help police the site. In the same way as if you manage a Facebook group, there's volunteers on there who do the moderation and administrations. U3.social gets taken off, then we need volunteers in the same way.
Would we have to abide by GPS type legislation, and where are we on? Where will be on that?
The legal stuff that I'm mostly concerned about is about holding personal data.
Okay.
Now that, as far as I understand it, that largely doesn't apply because we're not gathering additional information, but absolutely we'll need to think about the legal side of things. I don't want to ignore that.
Yeah, because you got the problem that, as you point out very graphically, the Second World War, a lot of the traffic analysed was basically on who talked to who. And as you said already, the actual conversations do give, and maybe even the sites you join all have a lot of information associated with them. Anyway, I've taken enough time. Thank you very much. I'm thinking about it. Obviously, I'm thinking about it. Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Honestly, Pete, have a think about it. Read through the webpage.
Yeah, Thanks a lot. I've talked enough. Thank you, Peter.
Paul again.
Yeah. Firstly, at the risk of getting sued for several $1 billion, if there happens to be a Facebook executive somewhere in the group, there are a couple of issues. I mean, one of which is this, and we're seeing this with what our own government announced only 2 weeks ago, trying to backdoor the end-to-end encryption between users. Now, as we all know, Facebook bought WhatsApp. WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, and I'm pretty sure that Facebook or Meta cannot read the content of messages and cannot listen into calls. But they can track who talks to who for how long, etc., which is how they get their money. It's a sorry, we've got some noise on. Is it? So yeah, it's how they make their money by selling people's data. But there's a couple of issues here. One of which was just been touched on is content moderation. There is some logic in U3A having separate domains, if you like. There's the local group that I'm in, Cheltenham. There's the wider UK one, and then there's U3A communities. And if they're managed differently, you do at least get around some of that problem of mass aggregation and that. But the other issue, which we haven't really touched upon, is authentication. I was a bit perplexed at first when I saw police officers getting rightfully arrested for social media posts they'd made on WhatsApp and on Signal. But it turned out that the protocols hadn't been broken and encryption hadn't been broken. What had happened was there was somebody in those groups that was either a secret user that wasn't that obvious to people, or it was somebody who wasn't a trusted person who leaked the content, and you'll never get around that. But if we are going down this route, which the government seems to be thinking is going to solve the child pornography, which frankly it isn't, because the real problem is the physical thing of what's happening to the kids, and they need to go after the people that are doing that. The problem is, how do we know, if we federate all this and we get bigger and bigger and bigger, whether we're still end-to-end encrypted and actually who's actually in the groups and they are who they say they are. And it's a particular worry here when you start getting into things like, I'm actually in two groups now. One is to do with trying to enhance legal legislation. There's nothing suspect about that. But when you get into things like current affairs, that can get a little bit more worrying because people want to be able to speak freely, but know they're only speaking within the group. So this authentication thing is, who's actually there in a group, and particularly when you start then federating across other things. And I'm pleased that you've come off Facebook, Peter. I am having a real battle trying to get friends of mine off Facebook. They keep sending me things, and I don't even open them, because once you open it, you're being tracked, and then you clear all your cookies and you've lost all the current web pages that you've got open,
Yeah, more good points, Paul. I would say that we're in the early stages of thinking about this. It's just a proposal. We certainly need to think about these things, but the the idea of end-to-end encryption, I don't think is that relevant. I would say, because you need end-to-end encryption for messaging. You don't really get end-to-end encryption when talking to Facebook or whatever. Yes, you've got the HTTPS encryption, no one can sniff the wire, but anything that you put into Facebook can be read by anyone else in Facebook, really. So security of the U3A.social server is going to be critical, and it's the same concern for all the other tens of thousands of servers. So, I mean, what we can do, of course, we can look to see what other servers are doing and steal good ideas from them. I mean, people aren't doing this secretly, setting up servers. So there's a lot of people paving the way for us that we can follow. But yes, absolutely, these sorts of things need to go into our considerations.
I think one of the things that's changed recently. Let me state a few things. I don't actually worry about what certain UK authorities are doing. Because they have to get a warrant, and it's triple locked and it's properly managed. I know people that work in that sphere, even though I'm retired now, and I don't have a worry about that. And actually, the bar, to getting an intercept is pretty high. You've got to be a pretty serious bad dude, to even come anywhere near that radar horizon. But when you start looking at, say, there's been a current affairs group in U3A talking about abortion or contraception, something like that, and one of those members happens to land in the States, and there happens to be somebody that was in that group from America, you could be landing in big trouble now after Roe v. Wade. And I'm sorry to say it, but these things really do need thinking about now. It's even bad if you happen to stay in a cheap motel and it happens to be 200 yards from an abortion clinic. Some of those idiots over there are so vile in their enforcing their agenda on other people that it's going to start to have serious impacts on people. And it may well be your case gets cleared, but if you've missed your flight and you've been in some US jail for 2 weeks waiting for a court appearance to prove your innocence, that has a major impact on your life. And this sort of thing we need to really think seriously about now, particularly now we've got that particular animal in the White House. And I'm sorry, it is slightly political, that, but it's reality. It's what's happening.
Okay, Alan.
Yeah, I've got some sympathy with the last speaker. If you look at the pros and cons of this, yeah, your presentation, Peter, was stacked well in favour of the pros. There are some possible disadvantages that we may need to think about that people have raised. But in general, it's massively in favour, on my view. The second thing is, again, talking about the main players, the American companies really, who are now leading the current platforms, and all the problems that we're going to get in the future with those platforms because they're going to stop fact checking. Anything that we can do different for that has got to be good. And the final thing is that there may be some downsides that I haven't considered and others, but mainly they're just upsides. But what I would say finally, I think, is that if we don't try some of these new things, nothing ever changes. We've got to give some new ideas a chance to succeed. If we dismiss them at the first hurdle, nothing will ever change.
Yep, good points. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think if we get enough interest, we have to take this quite seriously, both from a technical, legal, social points of view. But we're not alone on this. There's lots of people running sites on the Fediverse, so we can lean on others to give us advice as well.
And I would be prepared to help you.
So yes, thank you, Roger.
Yes, I'm afraid I don't really understand all this. I mean, you've talked about, for example, Blue Sky. I have no idea what Blue Sky is. But my two questions really is, how much is all this going to cost and who's going to pay for it? And also, if U3A moves to this new model, does that mean that I won't be able to get access via Google and things like that?
So Blue Sky is quite a popular alternative to Twitter, really, or X.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really mind about that. I mean, I'm happy that Blue Sky exists, I suppose. But
yeah.
It's just who's going to fund it, and will I still be able to get access to these websites if I don't join it?
So the funding is an open question. If you go on to u3a.social, funding is on one of the lists that we need to look at. But U3A Communities has got a hosting provider, which is all paid for, which is great. So potentially we can host an instance on there, and if that's true, then it would be free. The biggest cost to us is really going to be in people's time, I think, both technical and non-technical. We need volunteers. Otherwise, this is a non-starter. In terms of accessing websites, so if u3a.social starts up, you can join, get an account, and then you can talk to other U3A people around the world on the Fediverse, and indeed follow other people not part of U3A around the world, as we talked about. So there'll be no blocking. So this is a way really to think about U3A as a worldwide, rather than just like a UK or a third age trust or your local U3A perspective. Let's try and break this problem where people can't talk to each other after meetings or with other groups or someone else on the other side of the world who are also in a U3A doing similar sorts of things to you, but perhaps got more knowledgeable than you have, and you want some communications with it. So there's nothing here that's going to block access to anything. This is a way for U3A members.
But at the moment, if I join a meeting like this, I can already talk to people. So I'm. So as long as I can carry on doing what I am doing, I don't mind, but
Absolutely.
I don't want to change things. Yeah.
So the problem that you've got, you can come to these meetings and you can listen in and you can, raise issues like you have and questions. But when the meeting's closed, that's it. There's no, you can't sort of, oh, I thought of the thing I meant to raise there, but you can't reach out now because the meeting's finished. So that's one frustration I get with U3 in the UK. There's no mechanism that you can carry on talking to people either in the meeting you just had or your group or your local area. Once the meeting's finished, that's over as far as the Third Age Trust is concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Tom.
Yeah, I think social networking is quite important, and anything that improves it in the U3A is great. A couple of minor just observations really, but some challenges I faced is that I run a computer group, and I've elected not to ask people to join a discussion group on WhatsApp because I've reasoned that if people feel social pressure to join it, then anyone who wants to keep their personal phone number secret in case it gets out to somebody they don't want to contact them, then that doesn't do it. And so as a group leader with access to all everyone's personal data in Beacon, I am reluctant to get officially sponsor WhatsApp, although I have officially encouraged my group to join Signal because they can use a username, which achieves the purpose. Also, we've got a Facebook site now, which has had limited take-up. But I do kind of recognise some people don't always want to see a photograph of themselves. So if you go on a hike, which I sometimes do, one has to kind of ask everyone, is it okay if we have a group shot? Can we share it? If one shares it there is a WhatsApp group from our hiking groups. If you share it that way, then the resolution for a group shot means you can't recognise who was on the walk because the resolution is so poor for a group shot. And so a controlled for that walk or the walking group or whatever, all these things would be helpful to have, but difficult to I can't see how easy it might be with our existing resources. We've got a website and we've got some limited WhatsApps, and now the Facebook group. The Facebook group, the way it's been implemented in my U3A is that it's not only private, but you can't even discover it in a search. So actually finding the thing isn't easy. And I just wondered how you think one might use this the Fediverse Mastodon type stuff to address to provide a tool to solve some of those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Some good points there. And I would say if we get enough interest for U3.social, these would exactly be the sorts of requirements I would say to factor in before we implement the local policies. Absolutely, there are U3A groups already that are using both Blue Sky and the Fediverse, and I am seeing group pictures appear on my feed. Personally, I think that's fine. I do think the Third Age Trust tends to be quite limited in its interpretation of what you can share and what you can't share, and it tends to spread this idea of I'm going to if I'm going to create a mistake, I'm going to err on the side of caution and not share something. And of course, the whole point of social media is that you do share stuff that you found out. But yes, I think to more correctly respond to that, absolutely, these are concerns that we need to discuss and agree before launching such a site. Obviously, this is the first time I've shared with anyone the idea, so this is very early days. At this stage, we're looking at, is there sufficient interest for us to carry on? If, for example, you think this is a really bad idea, please go on, fill out the survey, say it's a really bad idea, and then we can kill the idea early. But if there's lots of people who think it's a brilliant idea, then we need to take it forward carefully and seriously. So I've got some comments on the chat. I suspect we may have already. So who manages and moderates the Fediverse? The protocols are managed by the W3C consortium, which manages a lot of the open source or the open protocols. The Fediverse, no one manages the Fediverse, but a group of individuals would manage and moderate the server, your own server. So you pick a server for your group of people, you have to manage your own server. Great ideas, great idea. Is it user friendly? I did a quick demo. If you are worried about user friendly, I would suggest you create an account on one of the Fediverse instances, have a good play, have a poke around, see how easy it is. Hopefully you saw on the screenshot, it looks like most other social media platforms, to be honest. Do you think U3 members who are not great with technology will be able to cope with it? I would say anyone who can use Facebook will be able to use the Fediverse. If u3.social, not that, I can't quite read that. Tuba is an app used an alternative to the web browser. Yeah, for the Fediverse, there's loads of apps you can choose from. You end up choosing one that works best for you. Can someone explain different platform server? There's a response to that. It'd be good for specific interest groups. Yes, absolutely. I think a requirement would be that we would need closed groups as well as fairly open groups. Are the slides available to view? Yes, they will be going out with an email tomorrow morning. Many thanks. Great. So I think I've finished the questions. Anything else to raise before we hang off? As I said, please fill out that survey. That gives an indication whether this u3.social is a flyer. But in any case, I hope looking at the technology behind the Fediverse is of interest, even if you're not interested in using it. Next month, back to how generative AI works. Nothing else from anyone else? If not, we've hit nail on the head time-wise.
Okay. Thanks very much, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Really
Thanks,
good.
Peter.
Thank you.
I'll see you next month.
See you again. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.